Okay, let's try this again. In this video, one of the silliest statements I've ever heard was the idea that the ancient life of the earliest that we could think of was a simple, only had maybe one piece of DNA and the smallest amount of DNA possible. And I'm here to tell you that yes, you could think in those terms and how it's interesting to think about the universe in its infancy be able to be a place that at some point was like life could have literally been everywhere. And so you have life actually existing in the very beginnings, even before Earth was formed. And then panspermia, boom, it just gets launched onto the planet. I remember a different video talking about tardigrades and how they have the ability to survive in space and then just wake up and go ahead and do things. So tardigrades could have been aliens in a way, and then life diversified from them here. So thing about it is, usually when asteroids hit the Earth, they explode. So it's not so easy, although it's possible. And with asteroids hitting, the hope is that in order for an asteroid to hit and not explode, it has to hit the ocean. And it's not that it's impossible, but also the other thing that is said in this video, the main thing I'm bothered about, just the general concept, and I can make this as short a video as I want really, um, is that the concept of life starting as a simple, tiniest amount of organism, right? It starts with just the most basic amount of DNA. Nothing more complex than that. And it literally did not start with DNA. There is no way that life started with DNA already. First, you have to have an organism, right? And it's really curious how DNA even works because apparently there's some kind of understanding about how to form things based off of the DNA functions that it's like, oh, well, we'll just like you have to have a conscious mind, you would think, in order to be organized enough that you actually make DNA. But the parts that are making DNA aren't even conscious. They're just doing the thing. And it's like DNA life is so weird. But you could easily make a life form out of just basic cells that start off with just the basic bits of, like in this case, it would have definitely been. The thing is, you gotta think about a life form, and my interpretation and my first idea, of course, includes a format of life that includes DNA. I can't, at the moment, imagine a life form that doesn't have DNA. My first example was a virus, where it has the DNA to work, but the function of producing itself. It's basically a sperm cell. It needs to have some other cell in order to survive and make more of itself. The problem is with viruses, they only go off to make more of themselves. And the original sperm cells could be exactly just like that, a virus, which is fascinating. Um, and it's like I mentioned, how does it does a virus actually have the ability to be alive, or is it just doing the best that it can until it finally hits something that's able to multiply itself? What kind of purpose would that life have? It's weird to think that animals definitely do have some kind of awareness. It's just not proper, like the same as ours. But it doesn't have to be the same, it just has to be some kind of a soul in any basic sense, where it wills itself to, like, go do something. And we know that there is a kind of a soul inside of most animals. So it makes you wonder if there's a soul that's like even more complex. It's like we have our macroscopic souls that is what is controlling the body, but what if we are housing trillions of actual beings that have consciousness of some basic level? Can't believe those words came out of my mouth, because that's the usual weird shit that I usually avoid. But just a thought. But the general idea is that if we look back in time to the early universe, do we think that just the idea that the universe could have started with DNA feels to me ridiculous, because like there has to be all of this other ideas first, all of these other beings that came first. So in order to find out how life started, you have to actually look at stuff and be like, okay, what organism parts can be developed randomly out of just basic components? And then after that, you just mix and match. And then sometimes, parasitically, whatever parts could have just went and been going to other parts, and then they fuse together and they become something greater. And then eventually, you end up with something complex. It's it's a curious idea, and it makes more sense to think that, well, it just is obvious. You can't start with DNA. You have to start with random parts. They have to collide together and cooperate for a bit. And it's like something as simple as a bacteria has this crazy machine, the flagellum, which is like, it's a literal machine. It's using electricity to make its tail wiggle on a basic fundamental level. And it's like that tiny little thing, and it's this little ability to like swish its tail and go through a medium of water or whatever. These life forms are weird. Whatever, I don't have time to talk about this. I'll talk about